Thank you, Mariska, and thank you, MP, for honoring our invitation. It's truly an honor for me. Um, as I've mentioned to
Thank
you
you.
earlier, I'm in awe of your writing, and I had to
Thank
make a
you.
conscious effort to slow down my reading so that I could appreciate each chapter and also be able to take notes because I really could have finished it in half a day. It was just so captivating and very interesting, the storyline. So thank you, MP, for this honor.
Thank you for the honor of inviting me as well. I'm so excited.
So let's get right into it. So the book we're reviewing or discussing today is Expecting Ties Baby, drawn
Mhm.
from your Love from Ghana series that includes Chancing Faith as well. Could you please
Yes.
tell us about the series?
Okay, so the actually when I started out, I didn't plan to write a series. So I wrote Chancing Faith first, which is this one. And Ty and Patricia were secondary characters in Chancing Faith, and they jumped out at me. They had, I think, a couple of scenes each, but then they were so interesting that I thought, oh, okay, so what if? And then I started thinking of a possible story for them, and um, that's how this one came about. So eventually, I've decided that there are going to be 4 books in the series. So 2 more books will come out, which are in the works now. So that's basically how the series came about.
Thanks, MP. And I'll be first in line to read the other two when they come out. Yeah. And this is interesting. So in Chance and Faith, Ty and Patricia were secondary characters, and then they became primary
Yes.
characters in Expecting Ty's Baby, which is
Yes.
a good segue into our next question. There's a theme that reoccurs throughout the book about the relationship between Africans and African Americans, and primary characters Patricia Wusu and Ty Weber exemplify this. Patricia being African Ghanaian and Ty being African American. Could you please speak to us further about the motivation behind this theme and how it appears in the book?
Okay. Yeah. So I'll start with Chancing Faith because Chancing Faith was an interracial, is an interracial romance. So when I decided to write about Ty and Patricia, I also wanted to bring out, there's this subtle, or maybe not so subtle, tension between Africans and African Americans, and even though I don't dwell too much on it, I wanted it to be seen that there actually is something. Sometimes we think, oh, he's black, she's black, but culturally there is a divide.
Yeah.
It was obvious in Chancing Faith, but I feel that like some readers would find it surprising that there is that tension when it comes to Black Africans and Black Americans. So that was something I wanted to show in this book. And it will be a bigger issue in the last book in the series because in the last book in the series, it's the female who is, in fact, the last 2 books, the females are the foreigners. And in the last book, it's a Black American female who happens to fall in love with a Ghanaian man who happens to be a tribal chief of his village. So there are a whole lot of things that she would have to deal with, even though she's a Black female and she thinks that, oh, she's coming to the motherland and things like that. And I think there are just certain things that on both sides we don't really appreciate about the other person's experience. So I wanted that to hint on that.
I like that you bring this up, actually speak about it because I mean, as a Ghanaian, I've always felt this, I don't know if it's that subtle, but this tension between Africans and African Americans. And even when we travel, there's that distinction. As you mentioned,
Yes.
we're all blacks, but there's a difference. And page 17, I love going back to the books. For example, there was this line, African Americans have this romanticized idea of Africa. Coming here seems like a pilgrimage, but how many have bothered to invest any money in Africa? So that speaks to some of the perceptions, perhaps misconceptions that we have
Yes.
of African Americans. Yeah, I mean, I really love the way you wove that theme through and through in different aspects of the book. And then speaking about our African setting, I also like that there's the element of the metaphysical and or spiritual. For example, Minesi, Patricia's grand aunt,
Yes.
who has the ability to see beyond the physical eyes. And for example, she knew that Patricia was pregnant before anyone told her. I mean, in this setting, for example, we don't sweep at nights. You know, we have all these practices that may be described as myths, but we know better. So speak to me a little about this idea to incorporate our spirituality, African spirituality in the book.
Okay, so I think, you know, that there are a lot of times that we see some of our traditions and some aspects of what we know or how we grew up, and we sometimes demonize them. But I think I wanted to bring out a positive aspect of it, or the fact that it's with us. You know, even when people are so religious and Christian, even in the way they talk, you know that they believe in the existence of other things. You know, we all know old women out there who say that they can see the child's, feet on your forehead and things like that. So I think we need to find a way to embrace the positive aspects of our culture and our traditions. And I wanted to bring a bit of that, that flavor into the story. So Minesi, although she had, I think, just one or two scenes. Well, there's one scene where she's mentioned, but she's not in, because basically she's the one who tells Patricia's mother that Patricia has a new man in her life. And, so Patricia's mom calls and, she's accusing her of not telling them that she has a new man. So it's just paying homage to the fact that we have that aspect of spirituality in our lives. It's not necessarily something we need to demonize, but we need to look at both the positives and the negatives of what we have.
Totally agree. After all is said and done, Expecting Ty's Baby is a romance novel. So
Yes.
A central theme is intimacy or sex. And I love that there's a lot of spontaneity in the book. For example, Ty and Patricia having phone sex, sending each other sensual photos. And then there's this idea to spend a week together as an experiment on compatibility. Could you speak to that, please?
Okay, so it comes down to well, in Chancing Faith, we learned that Patricia is quite open sexually. She's she's not as innocent as Naki, who was the heroine of Chancing Faith. She was a virgin, and we learned that Patricia is she's not like that. If she wants something, she goes after it. So I wanted that aspect of her personality to show. And the cohabiting thing, the 1 week trial was, Ty believes that Patricia is practical, and he's been trying to get her to marry him, and she keeps saying no. So his idea was that if they live together for a week or however long he's able to convince her to do it, then she's going to actually see that practically they fit together, because she's adamant that she's not even going to think about it. They are not getting married. Being pregnant is not a reason for marriage. And she's actually speaking from experience, because that's how her parents got married. But the thing is that she's French people would say idée fixe. So she's fixed on this idea, and she's unwilling to be flexible. She doesn't want to see his point of view or any other point of view. So that was the idea behind it. I don't know if I've answered your question.
You absolutely have.
Okay.
Another theme that resonates very strongly with me is the frustration that one goes through starting a new business. Patricia looking to start Beauty by Patricia, which for those of you who haven't read is, it will help her to expand her consultancy, also start a beauty academy and a product line for dark complexioned women, sorry. So there's this quest for financial independence vis-a-vis the frustrations. And then that also weaves into the availability or not of funds, grants for starting businesses, you know, which it's not very readily available, as we all know. And then Patricia applies for a fund from the African Women Entrepreneurs Development Fund. That is particularly supporting single women. And then there's just please speak to me about this. You mentioned in one of our conversations that you used to work in grant administration. So that informed
yes.
something that, yeah.
Okay. So yes, I worked in grant administration, my previous office. And that is where the idea of having this aspect of the story, that's where it came from. So Patricia is trying to set up a business, and she tries to go for a bank loan, and you know, they're getting her to jump through hoops. The interest rates are really high and things like that. So there's a previous conversation where somebody suggests she should look into grants, because there are all these international organizations that have various grants. And that was actually one of the things that surprised me when I worked in grants administration, that there's so many funding opportunities out there that we don't know about. Unfortunately, as Ghanaians, we seem not to know about them. And it's difficult finding money in Ghana. We don't have any, a lot of government support, for example. We don't have a lot of even funding from the private sector, which these are things that exist in other places in the world. So I was very surprised, and I always talk to people about, you know, do a search, do some research, search for things, organizations that are giving out money for such and such. Of course, there are going to be terms and conditions, but for the most part, that some of these NGOs, the UNs and stuff, I feel that the conditions that they have are manageable. So I wanted to tie the difficulty in setting up a business in Ghana as a Ghanaian, and the possible opportunities that we can explore outside of trying to borrow money from family members, trying to go to the bank. There are actually funding opportunities that we should probably look into. Yeah.
I mean, I totally agree with you that it appears that there's not much information, or we are not, maybe we are not making enough effort to get the information regarding grants. But I also feel that sometimes the grants that we find have particular criteria, as in the case of this grant that needed for her to be a single woman, and actually almost jeopardized her relationship with Ty, if you will, but not to give away too much for those who haven't read the book. I also noticed the theme of parental abandonment. Patricia's dad abandoned the family, leaving her mom as a single mom, and I think that largely influenced her personality and her inability to trust men, if you will. And then also Ty experienced parental abandonment because his mother left the family. There's a line there where she says, "I just got a gig at Monsoon. The manager said if I'm good, I could get a recording contract. Taking care of kids will just get in the way." So she chose her career over motherhood. That's rather sad. I mean, on both sides. Could you please speak a little in greater detail about that? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So it's interesting that you remember Ty, because a lot of people ask about Patricia and they forget that Ty's mother also abandoned him. And the interesting thing was that it's a common point for them, both of them as a couple. But at the same time, you see that their response to abandonment is very different. For Patricia, that's become a stumbling block. She's decided that men cannot be trusted. She doesn't want anything, at least not anything long-term. She's fine with short-term relationships, very physical, very sexual. When she's tired, it's over, and things like that. But on the other hand, Ty wants connection. The abandonment makes him want connection. So he wants to come to Africa. He wants to be connected to the motherland. He wants to understand where he, as a person, belongs in the world. So for me, it was interesting that they had their separate views of what the abandonment meant to them. And I wanted, people come with similar things happen to different people and they react differently, and just that specific decision puts you on a different path to the other person, so that was an interesting thing I wanted to bring out.
Thanks. I also like that. I mean, love is beautiful, but I also like the fact that in the book, aside from the love and the intimacy that Ty and Patricia, there's also the great potential to be collaborators or work partners. For example, Ty is an international finance consultant, and Patricia, looking to start her business, you could say is the ideal place to look for financial advice, if you will. What's your take on couples working together?
I think there are pluses and minuses. When, my dad used to like saying that money complicates things. Okay, he would often say things like, if sometimes a woman complains about her husband cheating, and it's not really about the fact that he's cheating, but it's the fact that he's spending money on the other woman. So if he were sleeping with the other woman and not spending the family's money on the other woman, some women will probably not mind, And apart from money, sex also complicates things. So if you bring those two things, those two dynamics into the mix, then you potentially have a complicated situation. Two people who are in a relationship trying to run a business. But at the same time, I think that level of intimacy, if done right, could actually be beneficial. If you're actually working as partners, then you probably understand each other on a level that other business partners don't have. So I think maybe it's a matter of the two specific people in question, whether they are able to work together and actually find the synergy of being, of using their intimacy, to build the business.
You read my mind.
Instead of having it get in the way. Yeah.
My thoughts exactly, as in it definitely would be couple specific, that we cannot put down a recipe for each of the couples, a formula. I'm a sucker for childhood stories, and I like that the page 212, the Patricia and Ty exchanged childhood stories. Patricia talking about swallowing a seed and thinking she was going to die, and then she wanted to make sure that her favorite doll went to her best friend. And then Ty also saying that he used to sneak into the science lab and release all the frogs from being used for dissection. I thought that was really, really cute. But to you, MP, is there a story that you can think of, and this is putting you on the spot, but like a fond memory from childhood, that...
Well, off the top of my head, not really. I'm sure something would present itself, but okay, so I'll talk about the stories that Ty and Patricia talked about. So Patricia's story is actually a real story, except that it's not my story. And I did get permission from the person to use that story. She was a national service person in my office a couple of years back. And she told us a story. In her case, it was gum. And I think her mother was trying to discourage her from chewing gum. And then she ended up swallowing the gum. And she thought she was going to die. So, so she wrote a will. And For Ty, his story is picked from one of my siblings. I'm not going to mention, but he wouldn't hurt a fly. If you found something in the house, instead of killing it, he would try, like a cockroach, he would try to convince you to, set it free outside, instead of killing it. And I, was inspired by that for Ty's story. But on my, so you should have warned me about this question. Then I would have thought about
I wanted to be
as
spontaneous as possible, but it will come. It will come.
Okay, I have one.
Oh,
I have one. It's a naughty one. But apparently I used to like cutting things. So I think they came and the curtains were cut, and my dad asked who cut them, and I must have been something like 5 years old, and my mom said it was me, and he didn't believe it. So then, being the scientist that he is, he went for a cloth apparently and put the scissors in my hands and asked me to cut it. So happily, I held each side of the scissors like that, and I started cutting happily. So yes, that's a fond childhood memory.
Happy moments cutting. Reminds me of my daughter. If you're not watching her, she's busy cutting everything, including the covers. But yeah. I also like this idea of a yes week. Patricia's best friend put her up to this yes week, where she considers Patricia, I think, a little pessimistic. So she said her friend needed to say yes for a change. I'm interested in the idea behind that, the yes week.
Okay, so the idea was, sometimes when it comes from maybe being self-motivating, instead of always taking the negative aspect or looking at all the problems, all the things that could go wrong, just say yes. Think about what could go right. You may surprise yourself that you actually enjoy something. There are a lot of us that I'm sure all of us have a story like that, where we didn't want to do something, our friends convinced us to do it, and then we ended up having fun. So it was actually supposed to be, the original thing is a yes day, but Naki thought Patricia is so pessimistic that for her, it's a day is not enough. She needs to do it for a week. And fortunately or unfortunately, Ty was able to take advantage of the yes week thing. But there were rules to it. So the basic thing is that even though you are trying to be positive and take chances and things like that, don't go and do something stupid. Just because they say yes doesn't mean somebody says go and cut your hand and you say yes. Let's get married or whatever, and then you just say yes without thinking about it. So just light-hearted things, fun things that at least even when there are consequences, they are not life-changing consequences. And I think that would help you or help all of us to learn a little bit about ourselves. So
I'm thinking I could use a yes week in my life, because I tend to overthink things a lot. So a little light-hearted, decision making would be beneficial. But I wouldn't want to monopolize the conversation. I'm wondering, I'd like to open up the floor in case does anyone have a question. Please raise your hand or unmute yourself and shoot your shots. Anyone with a question for MP?
Yes, I want to know for the general public where your books can be bought. I know we have it at GAW, Powerhouse. And for those outside Ghana, can they make online purchases for hard copies of your book, or even for soft copies, ebooks? If you let us know.
Okay, so yes, my books are available both as ebooks and as paperbacks. Yes, you can buy them online. For those who are not in Ghana, it's available on Amazon, on Kobo, and the rest. And then in ebook, those who use Okada books, they're not all, but most of my books are available there. in Ghana, apart from GAW, there are copies at EPP, the Legon branch. You can get Forest Girl and Chancing Faith there. But the rest of it, you'd go to booknook.store, and you order and they deliver it to you. And then on Facebook, the Walking Bookshop on Facebook. Again, you order and then they can deliver them to you. So all my titles are available that way.
Thank you, Mariska.
Thank you, MP.
Anyone with a question?
Yeah, I just want, I'm talking a bit much, but as you said, have a yes week. I was also saying that maybe we should also have a no week, because some people are always saying yes to do things for others and not thinking about themselves. Can you do this? Oh, yes. But inside, they really don't want to do it. So we have to also love ourselves and have a no week and then have a yes week. So it was just, by the way, comment.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, true. I'm also, there's a question I'm dying to ask. Give me a second. Yeah, back to romance. Ty and Patricia's relationship started as a no strings attached relationship, meaning they intended for it to be a 1 week relationship. And then everyone would go about their business from then on. But I'm just wondering, is that really possible where intimacy and feelings are concerned? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, well, of course, if you put feelings in the mix, then that becomes difficult. So if people already have feelings, then I think it's difficult to add sex to it and expect people to just, go their separate ways. But those the people with religious leanings will say that even if there aren't feelings, there's the belief that when you have sex, you impart a bit of your soul to the other person. So the more sexual partners you have, the more incomplete you are. Yeah. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's the aspect that I think sex has become freer or less sacred, as compared to when we were younger. I think both people are more willing to assert themselves. People are more able these days, for whatever reason, to separate emotions from sex. So I think it's easier for people to kind of come together physically and leave emotions behind than it was back in the day. Back in the day, sex was a big deal. Yeah. For most people. I mean, it's still like that for a lot of people these days, but for some other people, it's, and I'm sure the men will appreciate this more. Back in the day, you had to really work hard to get into a woman's pants. But these days, if a woman wants you, sometimes she doesn't even let you work hard for it. And some feel like if you work hard for it, then you can go and brag somewhere. But if you don't work hard for it, then you can't go and brag. So that I think there's a changing mindset that allows people these days to separate themselves emotionally from sex. But once you add feelings to it, I think it's difficult to say, let's just do this and then go our separate ways. And if the sex is really good, then that makes it difficult to walk away as well.
Sure. I mean, I like that the two primary characters, Ty and Patricia, are very confident in their sexuality, but even though there's that, there's a nice balance between this open-mindedness, quote unquote, and then also our traditional values throughout the book, which I have a deep appreciation for. I had another question for you. Just a second. So would you call Ty and Patricia soulmates? Do you buy into the idea of soulmates and twin flames and all of that?
Well, I think I do, I'm not sure if I would associate Ty and Patricia that way. Okay, so personally, I think, I don't think like there's one person for each person. I think there are a bunch of potential people, you know. So there are certain personality types that go together and certain experiences that go together. And so if you happen to, I mean, it's likely that you would meet a bunch of people who have about 80% of the things that you are looking for, and the things that, you know, when brought together with your experiences and life interest and all that, would make a good partnership. I don't know really if I believe 100% in twin flames and soulmates. Although, I mean, there are certain couples that you meet and you think that, wow, and you want to believe that if whatever happens, they would have somehow gravitated towards each other. But, well.
I guess like you, I've struggled with that idea for a long time, because I remember questioning, this was much younger. For example, I would say if you met your partner, for example, in Ghana, when you hadn't traveled, for example, to Albania or some other part of the world, how would you know for a fact that you haven't, quote unquote, explored the possibilities that could, you know, exist? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you would never really know, I guess. My last question is about publishing. What has your experience been like publishing books?
Okay, so I've done it both ways. So I've published with a publisher, and I've self-published as well. So initially, Chancing Faith and Expecting Ty's Baby were published by an American publisher, and I'd heard stories, the horror stories about publishing in Ghana and never receiving royalties and things like that. So there was that. And then there was the fact that I'd always been afraid or been concerned about how my stories would be taken on a global stage. So I was determined to publish, to get a publisher outside Ghana for my stories. And I think in my head, it was like, okay, so if an American or a European publisher picks up my book, then that means obviously it has international appeal. So that's where my thought processes started. And then I happened to, so I did a lot of research. I entered a lot of pitches, and it was through one of the editor pitches that Chancing Faith was picked up. So it was interesting, because then I actually learned the process, what goes into publishing. So, and it was fairly easy, because the publisher does everything. So they go through, we went through about 3 rounds of editing, and then, you know, each round tackles a specific thing, you know, the plot itself, the characters, the grammar, and all of that. And then, you know, we went through, they have a questionnaire for the cover and all of that. So it was fairly interesting. And then we also had to navigate, because I think I was their first African author. So they had to break certain ground with me, because some of the legal aspects of them hiring or signing up an author from Ghana, you know, they hadn't done before. But at least because they were a small publisher, they were willing to do certain things for me. And then so I did that, and then at some point I wondered what it would be to self-publish. And then I got to Forest Girl. And I don't know if you've read Forest Girl, but Forest Girl doesn't fall neatly into the traditional international romance, you know, genre. So I figured it would be very difficult to sell it to an international publisher. So then that then became my first self-publishing project. But even with that, I got an editor for it. So I paid somebody to edit the book. I paid somebody to do the cover for me, and all of that. And then luckily, I asked, I spoke with Nana Redamwa, whom a lot of us know. He'd done a lot of self-publishing, so he guided me through publishing on Create Space at the time. My experience in self-publishing made me appreciate what the publisher does for me, because it was a lot of work. But on the whole, well, I mean, I'm happy to do both. I'm not sure if I will stop doing one and do just the other. But I'm sure I'll do more self-publishing, and I'll definitely do more being published by a publisher. Maybe the next adventure will be to try and be published by a Ghanaian publisher and see how that goes.
Wow. But it's interesting that you have a wide range of experiences and that you're not afraid to get your hands dirty as far as self-publishing is concerned. That's very refreshing. And definitely, I thoroughly enjoyed Expecting Ties, Baby. Looking forward to the other two in the series coming up. If I get
Thank you.
before anyone else, I would be in on cloud 9. But
noted.
Thanks, Empi.
Maybe you can beta read it for me.
Oh, I would love that. I would absolutely love that. And thank you so much for this honor. I've enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
Mariska, you have any final questions or thoughts for Empi?
Well, I mean, when I first saw the book, just the cover alone, they say you can't judge a book by its cover, but the cover alone made me want to read the stories. And I was actually excited to see the first one where it had the black guy, the white guy and the black lady on the cover, because I thought this was unusual for a Ghanaian setting, and that she was very daring, you know. And then reading through it, and I was saying, God, how did she, you know, and all that. But then after a while, I think as I got older, I was thinking to myself, well, write what you want. Don't write what you think people will approve of, because there's always a market for every type of book, you know. And I'm glad that Empi has gone into the romance section. I think it's given a lot of other people courage to also write romantic novels. So thank you, Empi, for paving the way.
The way.
Yeah, you've paved the way, and we're going to have courage to also write such books. And then also some of the experiences that you compared with, like life outside of Ghana with young people in relationships and all that. A lot of young people, I mean, in the 70s, a lot of us traveled out of Ghana after our O levels and some A levels. I think a vast majority did, more than they're actually doing now. So a lot of young people were thrown into the culture of England. First of all, you're free from your parents. Secondly, you're out there in school and you can do what you want. And so we're plunged into this free thing of all-night parties, drinking, sex, and everything like that. And people actually went through all that, but they don't want to say they did it, you see. So seeing it written down as things that people went through is also a very exciting thing. I'm sure a lot of young people will read the book when they get to know what the content is about. And I just want to say thank you. And we look forward to it. Questions that I've had are that Auntie Cornelia is definitely going to get the book. So she's going to start from volume 1, 2, and 3. I'm sure, and then she's going to wait for the others. The cover of Forest Girl is so with the beautiful black lady on it.
Yes.
And then I like the men you have on your covers with really good bodies as well, you know. So, and then
Candy.
yeah, Auntie Cornelia. Oh, Ty's baby. MP says Ty's baby will be born in the next book. So that is fantastic. And then someone asks, how did you find your editor? So that is a question.
Okay, so for the Chancing Faith, it was that there's a website called savvyauthors.com, I think, and I'm a member. You can sign up for free, and they often have these editor pitches. So they would have an event where you pitch to an editor. So we pitched, and that editor asked for the first 3 chapters, I think. And then after they read the first 3 chapters, they asked for the full manuscript. But for Forest Girl, she was, well, she's an editor I'd worked with already. She edited my book, a previous book. And so I just contacted her and asked if she was free to edit Forest Girl for me. So that was actually, it was within the writing community. But there are a lot of people out there, a lot of professional editors. So if you're looking for one, you can ask me, but there are a lot of editor threads and groups on Facebook, for example. So you can search depending on what you write.
Yeah. We have professional editors who are affiliated to GAW as well, so you can also contact them. And then somebody, let's see, Chipo Natasha Zulu says, awesome, we can't wait for the new
Chipo.
book. So Chipo, I hope
I should mention that Chipo is my roommate from university.
Okay, so she's waiting for the new book. And then Auntie Cornelia says, I'm fascinated about the African American bit because I've just finished reading Maya Angelou's The Heart of a Woman, and was surprised to find she was in Ghana. She knows Kolebu and Makola. And then Edozi Khan Tamaklo says, MP, you have indeed broken grounds for other authors to freely write on love and sex. Thank you.
Thank you.
So those are the questions that have been posted. If there's anybody else with any questions, please feel free to post them. So over to you, Crystal, if you have anything else.
Thanks, Mariska. No, I don't have any final questions. I just want to say thank you as well to MP. It's been a delight. I enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed reading every bit of the book.
Thank you.
Reminded me of the hopeless romantic I am. Thank you so much for being such an amazing
Could we see the covers of the books? I don't know which ones you have, MP, but
yes, please.
Ty's baby be given a full screen?
Oh. How do I do that?
Crystal will have to control that, I think.
Okay.
I think once MP is speaking, you could keep the books up.
Okay. So these are the 2 covers: Chancing Faith, this one, and Expecting Ty's Baby, that one.